My husband had weak sperm, so we decided to try IVF. At the hospital, my husband secretly switched my eggs with his first loves. I secretly switched my husband's sperm with my ex-boyfriend's. Then I switched my eggs back. 25 years later, my husband's first love showed up to claim our daughter. Crying pitifully, she said, "Sweet daughter, I'm your real mother." When my daughter Sophie and I returned home from evaluating overseas medical cooperation projects, we were stunned. A swarm of people had gathered, including distant relatives we rarely ever saw. The scene looked like a family reunion. The most jarring sight was Emily sitting in the center of the sofa, crying dramatically. Jason, my wonderful husband who rarely came home, was holding her tenderly, comforting her in a gentle voice. I raised an eyebrow, set my suitcase aside, and looked at Jason. "What's the special occasion? Why so lively?" Sophie followed behind me, arms crossed coolly, looking at Emily with disgust. She had already suspected this woman's identity. My mother-in-law sat in the main seat, her expression troubled, hesitating to speak. Before Jason could open his mouth, Emily rushed towards Sophie with tears streaming down her face. "My sweet daughter, I'm your real mother." Sophie nimbly dodged her, wrinkling her nose in disgust as if Emily were something filthy. She stepped back, her voice ice cold. "My mother's name is Rachel. This child was truly my loyal supporter." I held Sophie's hand, giving her a reassuring look, then raised my hand and slapped Emily across the face. The crisp sound of the slap echoed through the living room. "Don't claim false relationships," I said coldly, my eyes sharp as knives. Jason jumped up, helping Emily with concern, and pointed at me furiously. "Rachel, have you lost your mind? How dare you hit Emily?" He raised his hand as if to hit me. Sophie, quick as lightning, stepped forward and slapped Jason. "You dare hit my mom?" Sophie's voice wasn't loud, but it carried undeniable authority. Jason froze, angry and furious, raising his hand to hit Sophie. Emily grabbed him, crying with fake sincerity, "Jason, don't hit her, she's our daughter." Her motherly act made me want to vomit. Jason lowered his hand and glared fiercely at Sophie. "If it weren't for your birth mother, I'd teach you a lesson today." Sophie gave a cold laugh. "Huh, I'd like to see you try." Her piercing gaze was just like mine when I was younger. I was secretly delighted, my daughter was truly well raised by me. An elder of the family cleared his throat, trying to calm the chaotic scene. "Everyone quiet down," his deep voice commanded with undeniable authority. Everyone gradually quieted, all eyes focusing on the elder. He looked at Jason. "Jason, why did you call everyone here? What's going on?" Jason took a deep breath, as if gathering courage. He put his arm around Emily's shoulders, appearing deeply emotional. "Actually, I have an important announcement to make today." He paused, his gaze sweeping across everyone before finally landing on Sophie and me. I watched him silently, wondering what monkey show he was about to perform. "Sophie, she isn't Rachel's biological daughter," Jason said quietly, but his words exploded like a bomb in the living room. Sophie turned sharply to look at me, her eyes filled with shock. I gestured for her to stay calm. The relatives around us whispered among themselves, excited like sharks smelling blood. "Back when we did the IVF procedure." Jason paused, as if struggling to continue. "The doctor said Rachel's eggs weren't viable, so to spare her feelings about wanting to be a mother, I switched them with Emily's." This idiot was sneakily throwing dirt on me. Jason's malicious gaze fell on me, seemingly waiting for me to lose control in anger. But I remained calm, forcing him to continue his performance. "Today, I called everyone here to witness." He looked lovingly at Emily, Sophie recognizing her real birth mother. The relatives immediately erupted in discussion. If Sophie isn't Rachel's daughter, she should definitely recognize her birth mother. Exactly, a hen that doesn't lay eggs has been occupying the position of the Walker family daughter-in-law for so many years. It's time to step down. Rachel has been controlling the family business all these years. Now that the truth is out, she should be removed from the company management. Listening to these comments, I laughed coldly to myself. These malicious relatives had been suppressed by me for years, cleared out of company management positions, only able to benefit from year-end dividends. They were naturally dissatisfied with me. Now they were delighted to watch the drama, hoping Jason and I would break up so they could return to the company and get their share. Sophie looked at the relatives who made no attempt to hide the greed in their eyes and squeezed my hand tighter. I spoke up. "Sophie is my child. She will only ever be my child." My voice wasn't loud, but it was firm. Emily put on a helpless expression, choking with emotion. "Sister, how long will you keep deceiving yourself?" I wasn't deceiving myself. Sophie was truly my child. Did Jason and Emily really think they could fool me? Years ago, When Jason was diagnosed with weak sperm, we decided to try IVF. Before the embryo was created, I accidentally caught Jason working with a nurse to secretly tamper with my egg storage container. I overheard him happily calling Emily, saying he had successfully switched her eggs in. At the time, I didn't make a scene. I silently turned around and gave the doctor $100,000 to replace the eggs with my extra eggs that had been harvested earlier. I also kindly asked the doctor to replace Jason's sperm with my ex-boyfriend's. On the day the embryo was created, Jason and I witnessed the birth of the miracle together. He was abnormally happy, probably thinking it was his and Emily's child. Watching his foolish expression, I was laughing inside. Over the years, I watched him act like a devoted father to Sophie, treating her well, and it brought me immense satisfaction. He tried to trick me, but never imagined he'd been raising someone else's child for over 20 years. Jason interrupted my reminiscing, mocking me, stubborn as a mule. Sophie may have come from your womb, but the egg wasn't yours. Her biological mother is Emily. My tone remained calm but carried a hint of challenge. Are you dreaming in broad daylight? If you don't believe it, let's do a DNA test. Jason's tone was firm, and I want a divorce. You've been clinging to me, forcing me into marriage. I've been with you for 25 years, I've done more than enough for you. When he mentioned divorce, his face revealed a trace of delight. He must have been wanting this for a long time. Huh? He dares say he's done enough for me? Married to him for 25 years, I've basically been alone for 25 years. When I was raising our child alone, he was out romancing Emily. When I was fighting in the business world to uphold the Walker family name, he was indulging in nightlife and entertainment. But he was wrong about one thing, I wasn't his devoted follower because I loved him. I married him only to gain the status of the Walker family's daughter-in-law and to control Walker Enterprises. And now, Walker Enterprises was completely under my control. So Jason no longer had any value to me. Divorce is fine, I shrugged indifferently, but a DNA test isn't necessary. I'm certain Sophie is my child. Sophie looked at me, her gaze resolute. Mom, I believe you. Jason and Emily immediately became anxious. Sophie, don't you trust your father? Sophie ignored him, staying close to me. Just then, a young man who looked like a college student burst in. He walked straight to Sophie, excitedly calling out, "Sister!" Everyone in the room was stunned. It was bad enough that a mother had appeared out of nowhere, now a brother had shown up too. I looked at the young man who resembled Emily, and silently gasped. This was probably Jason and Emily's illegitimate son. They had kept it well hidden for over 20 years. It seemed this drama was even more interesting than I had imagined. My mother-in-law sat at the head of the room, looking at the young boy with commanding presence. Jason, what's going on? The atmosphere in the living room froze once again. The young man's eyes were red, as if about to cry. Sister, my name is Thomas. I've always known about you. He stuttered slightly, his voice soft but trembling. He glanced at me furtively, then quickly lowered his head, as if afraid I might scold him. My mom often told me about you, said you were smart and beautiful. Emily burst into tears at the right moment, covering her mouth with a handkerchief, her shoulders shaking. Sophie, my precious daughter, Mommy has missed you so much all these years. She looked up, her eyes filled with tears, as if she had suffered a terrible injustice. Thomas, he's always wanted to meet you too. We often secretly went to see you. Thomas nodded eagerly, adding urgently, it's true. Sister, I enrolled in your school just to be closer to you. He pulled out a stack of photos from his pocket and carefully handed them to Sophie. These are pictures of you that I secretly took. Sophie took the photos and flipped through them quickly. They showed her in a graduation gown, smiling brilliantly, exhausted after dance practice, engaged in debates with classmates, looking radiant. Sophie felt goosebumps rising. All these years, a stalker-like figure had been hiding nearby, watching her, taking secret photos of her. Jason was busy too, walking to his mother, pointing at Thomas, his tone heavy. Mom, this is your grandson. Today, all the family members are here to witness. Please accept him. Jason was quite clever. He knew that after his father's death, his mother was the real authority in the Walker family. He invited all the relatives to pressure his mother into acknowledging Thomas. He was confident that if his mother agreed to recognize Thomas as a legitimate heir, I would have nothing to say. After all, during these 25 years, he had observed my obedience and filial piety toward his mother. Thomas was quick-witted, immediately turning to my mother-in-law, respectfully calling out, "Grandma." My mother-in-law looked at Thomas, then at me, her eyes complex, not immediately responding to Thomas's greeting. I knew she cared for me. Not wanting to put her in a difficult position, I spoke up to break the awkward silence. Jason, your real purpose is to have this illegitimate son recognized as family and inherit the Walker fortune, right? Why involve Sophie at all? I turned to look at Sophie, exchanging a glance. Even if Sophie wasn't my biological child, she's still the only child under my name. All my assets, property, stocks, funds, including 20% of Walker Enterprises shares, will all go to her. Sophie, if that's the case, would you rather stay with me or go with your father and this questionable mother? My clever girl's mind was working fast. Her eyes rolled quickly, immediately understanding my meaning. She promptly threw herself into my arms, rubbing her cheek against my arm, chirping, Dad now has a brother, and he's not leaving his property to me, so of course I'll stay with Mom. Good girl. Truly well taught by me. She directly stated their purpose through reverse psychology. When Emily heard I was willing to give all my assets to Sophie, her eyes lit up instantly, brighter than a 1,000-watt bulb. She knew I had substantial assets, jewelry, real estate alone was a small fortune, not to mention that 20% stake in Walker Enterprises, which was a mountain of gold and silver. Greed, naked greed, was undisguised on her face. She leaned into Jason's ear, whispering intensely. When the old man died, to keep the balance of power, he divided his 60% stake in Walker Enterprises into 4 parts, 20% to Rachel, 20% to the old lady, 10% to Sophie, and you only got 10%. If Rachel transfers her shares to Sophie, and later we get Sophie's shares too, you'll have 40%. The urgent matter now is to make Rachel give up her shares and assets. Make her leave with nothing, then bring Sophie to our side. Jason thought about it and agreed Emily was right. So he stood up, acting like a caring father to Sophie. Sophie, your brother is a boy, he can make his own living, he won't compete with you for property. I'm also willing to give all my assets to you. He paused, adding a condition, but first, you must go with Emily for a DNA test. If the test results show you are mother and daughter, you must recognize Emily as your mother and treat her well. Sophie secretly glanced at me, and I imperceptibly nodded. Fine. Sophie agreed immediately, but she cleverly added her own condition. However, before we go for the DNA test, both parents must go with me to a notary office and transfer all assets to me unconditionally. I silently applauded her. This child was truly clever. Only what's in hand is real, never trust verbal promises. At this, the relatives who were enjoying the drama became excited. What Emily could think of, they naturally could too. They rubbed their hands together, as if seeing countless treasures beckoning them. Jason knew nothing about business management. If Walker Enterprises was under his name, they could easily manipulate him. Good, good, good. This is how it should be, one relative cheered. I'll contact the notary right away. Another relative pulled out his phone, making a call. Everyone was busy with excitement, as if preparing for a celebration. During their busy activity, my mother-in-law tried to stop me, worried, Child, are you sure about transferring your assets? I smiled and shook my head, reassuring her, Mom, don't worry, I know what I'm doing. My mother-in-law had always recognized my capabilities. Seeing my calmness, she stopped trying to dissuade me. With their help, all assets under Jason's and my names, except for $50,000 each for living expenses, were transferred to Sophie. In the notary office, Jason and Emily looked at Sophie lovingly, as if seeing future days of commanding Walker Enterprises, smiling happily. I watched them daydreaming, and then looked at my daughter who had instantly become a millionaire, and I smiled too. But having Jason bleed out his assets wasn't enough. I wanted to skin Emily alive too. Emily, don't you say you love Sophie? Shouldn't you show it? I casually spoke up, my gaze sweeping over Emily's carefully crafted natural-looking face. I've raised Sophie for over 20 years in your place, spending hundreds of thousands. I don't need your compensation, just give the money to Sophie, since I love her most. Sophie took the opportunity to rub salt in the wound. Ms. Emily, you've been with my dad for over 20 years, surely you have a few $100,000. We're at the notary office anyway, would you like to show your loyalty? Otherwise, I might suspect you don't really love me and only want to claim me because of the Walker family wealth. Emily's face stiffened, caught in a dilemma. Giving the money would hurt, but not giving it would make Sophie doubt her motives for claiming kinship. You can't catch a wolf without using a kid as bait. Emily gritted her teeth, took out a card from her purse, and handed it to Sophie. Sophie, of course Mommy loves you. Here's $500,000, money I've saved for over a decade. Sophie unhesitatingly grabbed the bank card, calling the notary over immediately to notarize the transfer. Emily stood by smiling, though her smile was somewhat distorted, as if she were being cut to the bone. The testing facility was Jason's choice. Afraid I might tamper with the results, he selected the most authoritative National Judicial Testing Center. I snorted coldly at his self-perceived cleverness. After the testing center staff collected blood samples from me, Emily, and Sophie, I asked them to also take Jason's blood for testing. Jason looked at me incredulously. Rachel, have you lost your mind? Sophie is unquestionably my child. I smirked unpleasantly. We're Chinese, since we're here anyway, might as well do it. Sophie didn't understand why I was doing this, but she knew I definitely had a purpose, so she threw a tantrum to make Jason take the paternity test too. Jason now treated Sophie like a deity, so he agreed to her request. As we left the testing center, Emily's son Thomas arrived late, carrying a bouquet of fresh flowers. Sister, he affectionately called to Sophie, presenting the flowers and moving to embrace her. Sophie's expression was as disgusted as if she had swallowed a fly, pushing him away forcefully. Don't touch me. This guy was half a head taller than Sophie, looking quite presentable. Sophie, this is your brother. Emily quickly advised, family should love each other. Sophie rolled her eyes. The test results aren't out yet, don't claim relationships so hastily. I won't disturb your loving family time, I said flatly. Jason, let's go to the Civil Affairs Bureau to get our divorce certificate now. Since we all had no assets under our names and no child custody issues to negotiate, Jason and I didn't even need to sign a divorce agreement. We went directly to the Civil Affairs Bureau and got our divorce certificate. Emily's eyes widened in surprise. She was overjoyed. She clearly hadn't expected our divorce to happen so quickly, thinking I would stubbornly refuse to divorce. But Sophie stood firmly by my side. Seeing how close Sophie and I were, Emily became jealous again. After Sophie went to the parking lot to get the car, Emily finally found an opportunity to attack me when I was alone, saying with a sarcastic tone, Rachel, Jason never loved you. Do you know why Sophie is named Sophie? Because there's a Sophie in my name. Jason hugged Emily, looking smug. Once the DNA test results come out, Sophie will naturally return to our side. Thomas also dropped his little rabbit act that he displayed in front of Sophie, becoming arrogant. Now all the money belongs to sister. Once the DNA test results come out, you'll be begging on the streets. I didn't bother responding to their stupid provocations. Not getting a response from me, Jason felt victory was assured and revealed his true intentions. You've controlled Walker Enterprises for so many years. Now it's my turn to be in charge. So you were indeed using Sophie to get at Walker Enterprises, I laughed coldly. So what if I was? Jason's face showed complete indifference. Now all assets have been transferred to Sophie. Once the DNA test results come out, I'll be the true master of Walker Enterprises. Then I'll wait and see if you're really that lucky to truly lead Walker Enterprises. My eyes were cold as ice. They were clicking their little abacuses loudly, thinking victory was in the bag. But they didn't know they never had a chance from the beginning. While I was handling the transition at the company, Thomas appeared at the office, drove the general manager out, and sat comfortably in the leather chair with his legs crossed, claiming that since his sister was the chairwoman, he was the general manager. People didn't dare stop him, but I dared to teach him a lesson. Throw him out, I commanded. Several security guards immediately stepped forward to grab Thomas. You dare touch me? Thomas jumped up, pointing his finger at the security guards. My sister is the chairwoman. I'm her real brother. You dogs, just try to touch me. He cursed at me too. You which have already been driven out of the Walker family, you have no right to command Walker Enterprises employees. He shouted, pushing the security guards while trying to come at me. Truly lawless. Just then, Sophie arrived. What's going on? She asked coldly. Sister, you're just in time. Thomas immediately put on a pitiful expression. This old woman wants the security guards to throw me out. This is a company, not your playground. Sophie looked at him coldly, and I'm not your sister. Sophie, how can you talk to your brother like that? Emily had also arrived. You are siblings. In the future, your brother will help you handle company affairs. Without family support, a woman like you will be bullied. Sophie just laughed coldly. Throw both of them out. When Emily saw that a gentle approach wasn't working, she started making a scene, not letting the security guards touch her. I am the wife of Jason Walker, the heir of Walker Enterprises, and Sophie's real mother. This company is mine too. I laughed coldly. Throw them out. Don't dirty the company. The security guards now understood who truly owned the company and dragged these presumptuous people out. Emily was still shouting, Rachel, just you wait. When the test results come out tomorrow, I'll make you kneel and beg me for food. I watched her pathetic state and replied, don't worry, I've been waiting for the test results too. Finally, the day Emily had been eagerly awaiting arrived. I deliberately woke up early, took great care with my appearance, and applied light makeup. After all, I wanted to look beautiful when I watched Emily get humiliated. Except for my mother-in-law, Jason had again invited family members to witness at the judicial testing center, probably wanting more people to see me embarrassed. How naive. He wanted everyone to laugh at me, but he would be the real joke. Before seeing the results, I asked Jason with a faint smile, "This is the testing center you chose yourself. You won't have any objections to the results, right?" Jason straightened his back and declared confidently, "Of course not. I, Jason Walker, always keep my word." I almost laughed out loud. He truly wouldn't believe it until he saw his own coffin. The testing officer hadn't returned yet, and Emily began her performance. She clung affectionately to Jason's arm, resting her head on his shoulder, saying in a coquettish voice, "Jason, once the results are out, our family of 3 can finally be reunited." As she spoke, she cast a challenging glance at me. I simply ignored her and turned to look at Sophie. Sure enough, Sophie also wore a cold expression, completely disregarding Emily's performance. Emily had hit a brick wall and felt somewhat awkward, but she quickly adjusted her expression and turned to Sophie. "From now on, I'll be your mother. If you want anything, just tell Mom." She took out an exquisite little box from her bag and handed it to Sophie. "This is a necklace Mom bought for you, a gift to celebrate our reunion. Do you like it?" Sophie didn't even look at it, saying coldly, "I don't need it." The smile on Emily's face froze. Jason quickly tried to smooth things over. "Sophie, your mother means well." "I don't need her goodwill," Sophie interrupted him. "I only have one mother, and that's Rachel." A warm current surged in my heart. My daughter would always be on my side. Just then, the testing officer returned with 3 test results. Emily, Jason, and Thomas immediately perked up, their eyes fixed intently on the documents in the officer's hands. Their gaze was like hungry wolves spotting prey. They looked at me smugly, as if the next moment I would be utterly disgraced while they would enjoy fame and fortune. I was about to burst out laughing. The testing officer opened the file, and Emily's breathing became rapid, her bright red nails digging into Jason's arm. Jason was also excited to the point of shaking, his face flushed red as if about to explode. He muttered under his breath, "Sophie, our family can finally be rightfully together." I noticed his look toward me was as if I were already a defeated dog in the water. Emily was even more dramatic, her entire body was trembling slightly. "Sophie, Mom has finally proven herself." Thomas, that fool, also eagerly walked up to Sophie. "Sister, when we get back to Walker Enterprises, you must immediately appoint me as general manager. I'm your real brother, only I will sincerely help you." His face showed entitlement, as if the general manager position was already in his pocket. I watched the 3 of them making fools of themselves and laughed coldly inside. Until the very last moment, they wouldn't know who the real clown was. The testing officer cleared his throat and began to read the results. According to the DNA comparison results, Ms. Emily and Ms. Sophie. He deliberately paused, making Emily and Jason even more tense. They stretched their necks, almost wanting to press their ears to the officer's mouth. The surrounding Walker family members also held their breath, their expressions varied, waiting to see my embarrassment. Do not have a mother-daughter relationship. The air seemed to freeze. Jason's eyes widened as he shouted hysterically, like a madman, "Impossible. There must be a mistake." Emily also screamed, "How can this be? How can there be no mother-daughter relationship?" Her face instantly turned pale, even her carefully applied makeup couldn't hide the terror on her face. "Are you blind? Let me see." Thomas snatched the report, and after seeing the results, collapsed into a chair, muttering, "How could this happen?" I asked the testing officer to read the paternity test report between Sophie and me. According to the DNA comparison results, Rachel and Sophie are mother and daughter. The room erupted in an uproar. Jason looked as if he had been struck by lightning. "Impossible," he muttered in shock. Seeing Sophie, my mother-in-law, and everyone looking confused, I kindly explained, "When you were tampering with the eggs, I saw you. So I switched my eggs back." Watching his increasingly ugly expression, I continued, "Oh, and I also replaced your sperm with my ex-boyfriend's." The entire room was shocked into silence by this news. My mother-in-law suddenly raised her head, her cloudy eyes filled with shock. I looked at Jason and said deliberately, "Sophie is not your child. Congratulations, you've been raising someone else's child for over 20 years. After hearing this, Jason grabbed the paternity test report between him and Sophie from the officer. Upon seeing the results, his eyes instantly turned blood red, and he rushed at me furiously, trying to hit me. "Bitch," he roared. The bodyguard behind me reacted quickly, blocking him and pushing him hard to the ground. I looked down at him, my eyes cold. When Emily heard this news, she seized it like a drowning person grabbing a straw, rushing to Jason's side and screeching, "Jason, if Sophie isn't yours, then she's not part of the Walker family. The heir can only be Thomas." Her bright red nails almost dug into Jason's flesh. Jason suddenly understood, abruptly raising his head, a vicious light flashing in his eyes. He stumbled to his feet and walked to my stunned mother-in-law. "Mom, all relatives, you've heard and seen it, Sophie isn't my child." He pointed at me, spittle flying as he shouted hoarsely, "She's the illegitimate child of Rachel and her ex-boyfriend. We can't let Walker family property fall into outsiders' hands." Emily and Thomas joined in the clamor. "Right. Throw that little bitch Sophie out. The Walker family heir can only be me, Thomas." My usually calm mother-in-law had recovered from her shock. She completely ignored Jason, her expression complicated in a way others couldn't understand. Unusually emotional, she asked me in a trembling voice, "Rachel, is it true?" Seeing her like this, tears suddenly gathered in my eyes. "Yes, it's true." Jason, dissatisfied with his mother's reaction, shook her hand, "Mom, hurry and announce that Thomas is the heir." My mother-in-law had regained her composure. She brushed his hand away and asked calmly, "Do you know who Rachel's ex-boyfriend was?" Jason scratched his head in frustration, "Who cares? The point is, Sophie isn't from the Walker bloodline. Rachel's ex-boyfriend was your older brother Ethan Walker, so Sophie is still a Walker child, and in fact, the only legitimate heir." My mother-in-law's words dropped like a bomb into the crowd. The Walker family tradition, as everyone knows, only allows children from the main branch to inherit the family business. Only if that line dies out would it pass to illegitimate children. My mother-in-law fixed Jason with a piercing stare, warning him, "After Ethan's accident, your father had no choice but to bring you back into the family. Jason, don't forget your place." Jason's face turned pale at being reminded of his status. The reason Jason was named Jason, meaning healer, was because his mother, who couldn't be openly acknowledged, chose it. Years ago, when his father was young, he was entrapped by a female secretary who gave birth to Jason. But the Walker family valued pure bloodlines, not just any child could enter the Walker family gates. The only child Mr. Walker acknowledged was Ethan, whom he had with my mother-in-law, who came from a scholarly family. Apart from providing child support payments on time, Mr. Walker never looked at Jason, which is why his mother gave him this name with its hidden meaning. But unpredictable events occurred. Ethan, whom Mr. Walker had carefully groomed as his heir, had an accident at a construction site while inspecting company projects and became a vegetative patient. Out of necessity, Mr. Walker turned his attention to Jason. He offered Jason a condition: if he wanted to return to the Walker family, he had to marry me, because my father was Mr. Walker's lifesaver. Jason didn't have feelings for me and had his white moonlight, first love, so he didn't want to marry me. But he clearly understood the benefits of returning to the Walker family, so seeing that I seemed to admire him, he married me. Emily had originally looked down on the penniless Jason, but when he suddenly became the Walker family's young master, she agreed to be his mistress. Jason was quite faithful to Emily. The reason we did IVF was not only because he had weak sperm but also because he wanted to remain faithful to Emily and wouldn't touch me. The two had planned to swallow up the Walker family after Mr. Walker's death, but they didn't expect that Mr. Walker would leave a countermeasure, dividing his shares into 4 parts to keep us in balance, and designating me as the chairwoman of Walker Enterprises to manage it, not allowing Jason to take up any position in the company. So Jason could only take dividends at the end of the year based on his shares. Having not gained power all these years, he was very resentful. "I don't believe Sophie is my brother's daughter. Why should we believe Rachel's word?" Jason was making a last desperate attempt. I looked at him mockingly, taking out another paternity test report from my bag. "This is the paternity test report between Sophie and Ethan." I opened the report for everyone to see. "You don't have to believe me, Ethan is still in the care facility, Sophie is here, and you can apply for on-site sampling from a national testing institution. Sophie is of Walker blood. I trust everyone will be convinced." Emily and Thomas were dumbfounded. They never imagined that Sophie was actually Ethan's child. The old lady still appeared calm and composed, but there was a fleeting tear in her eye. The relatives began to discuss among themselves. "So Sophie is Ethan's child. This means Sophie is the true Walker heir. Jason, that illegitimate child, seems to have no way to seize the Walker fortune." They looked at Jason with contempt. Jason seemed drained of all energy, slumping to the floor, his eyes hollow. He didn't have Sophie claim him back as her father, and he had given all his property to her. Emily and her son also wilted like frostbitten eggplants. The relatives clearly saw that Jason was no match for me. Following Jason would bring them no benefits. So they all got up and dispersed quickly. Jason stared at me, thinking who knows what, then got up with seeming humility and approached me fawningly. "Rachel, I know you love me, you're just angry about my philandering, right? I promised to break it off with Emily. Will you let me come back to the Walker family?" I looked at him with pity and slowly spoke. "Jason, you're wrong. I never loved you." His face instantly turned pale. What did you say?" He trembled. "Then why did you always look at me longingly? Why did you insist on marrying me?" I explained coldly. "I looked at you because you resembled Ethan, seeing your face was a comfort to me. I married you to preserve the family business for Ethan. You replaced Ethan as the Walker family's young master, and I needed to marry you to become the Walker family daughter-in-law, which gave me the credentials to enter Walker Enterprises and prevent the covetous branches from seizing power. You must be wondering why Ethan was my ex-boyfriend, why Mr. Walker would rather entrust Walker Enterprises to me to manage than to you, his blood-related son, and why mother-in-law has treated me like a daughter all these years. You weren't raised in the Walker family as a child, so you don't know. Although I grew up in the countryside, Mr. Walker would bring me to the Walker family villa every summer and winter vacation to thank my father for saving his life. Ethan and I were childhood sweethearts and had been in love for years. Mother-in-law raised me like a daughter, and Mr. Walker groomed me as Ethan's virtuous wife. I received the same elite education as Ethan." I laughed loudly, as if looking at a fool. "How ridiculous that you actually thought I was just a country girl who climbed into the Walker family through my father's life-saving grace, and stupidly believed I loved you." Jason stood there as if struck by lightning, dumbfounded. He had always believed I loved him desperately, but now he realized he was just a pathetic substitute. Everything he possessed was built on a lie. Now that the lie was exposed, he had nothing left. Jason completely broke down. We had all been acting, playing our parts for 25 years. Now the play was over, and it was time for the curtain to fall. I had the housekeeper pack up Jason's things and drove him out of the Walker family villa. "Mom, I recently collaborated with a foreign medical institution on a project about stimulating the nervous system of vegetative patients to promote awakening." My mother-in-law suddenly raised her head, her eyes lighting up with hope. "You mean?" I nodded. "Ethan has already received several treatment sessions, and his brain waves are very active. The doctor says he will wake up soon." My mother-in-law was overjoyed, tears streaming down her face. "Ethan, my Ethan." Meanwhile, Jason, expelled from the Walker family, stumbled down the street like a stray dog. 25 years of false prosperity, destroyed in an instant. He returned to the apartment he had previously bought for Emily, but she wasn't very welcoming. "It's all your fault. Now we have nothing left." Jason whirled around, his eyes bloodshot. "My fault? If you hadn't switched those eggs back then, would any of this have happened?" Emily froze. She hadn't expected Jason to push all the responsibility onto her. You agreed to it at the time, didn't you?" Jason grabbed her arm with frightening force. "Shut up. What's the use of talking about this now? We're broke, do you understand? How are we supposed to live on just $50,000? Emily struggled to break free from his grip. What should we do? We can't exactly go out and get jobs, can we?" Jason released her hand dejectedly. Yes, what should they do? He was accustomed to a life of luxury, used to being the center of attention. Now he had nothing. Emily suddenly thought of something. $500,000. Sophie still has my $500,000. Jason's eyes lit up. "Let's go find Sophie." The two stumbled to Sophie's apartment. After ringing the doorbell repeatedly, Sophie finally opened the door lazily. Seeing the two of them, her face showed no surprise. "What do you want?" Emily pushed past Sophie, barging into the room. "Give me back my money." Sophie laughed coldly. "On what grounds?" Emily pointed at Sophie, trembling with anger. "That's my money." Sophie sat down on the sofa, crossing her legs. "Ms. Emily, that $500,000 was notarized as an unconditional gift to me, so I don't need to return it to you." Emily felt the world going black. You. She pointed at Sophie, sputtering "you" for half a day, unable to form a complete sentence. A sharp pain shot through her chest, and she collapsed straight to the floor. Jason was terrified. Emily! He rushed over, cradling her, shouting desperately. Sophie watched the scene and, being kind-hearted, called 911. Then, as if nothing had happened, she continued reading her book. Unable to get money, Jason and Emily blamed each other. After the $50,000 ran out, Jason was broke. Emily wasn't about to use her remaining private savings of a few $1,000s to support Jason. She urged him to find a job, threatening to throw him out otherwise. Later, I kindly called a headhunter to arrange a job for Jason. Some time later, I invited Sophie to join me for dinner. On the way to the restaurant, I was humming a tune. Sophie asked why I was so happy. I told her it was because we were about to see a good show. Sitting in a private room on the second floor of a restaurant with an open kitchen, Sophie looked through the transparent glass and saw Jason, who had never done a day's work in his life, wearing a chef's uniform cooking in the restaurant downstairs. She raised an eyebrow at me. Is that it? Of course not, keep watching, I smiled, asking her to wait patiently. A moment later, we saw Emily enter the restaurant with a handsome, well-built man. The two were laughing and talking, very intimate. Jason naturally saw them too, his expression instantly freezing. Emily? What are you doing here? Emily completely ignored him, continuing to flirt with the man. Jason raised his voice. Emily, I'm talking to you. Emily finally looked up impatiently, giving him a sidelong glance. What am I doing? Eating, of course. Are you blind? Jason pointed at the man. You and him. Emily suddenly laughed, her body shaking with mirth. What about me and Kevin? Does it bother you? Jason's face turned the color of a pig's liver. He's my boyfriend. What about it? Jason staggered backward a few steps. Boyfriend? You actually. I actually what? Emily looked at him challengingly. I'll tell you, Jason, I've been with Kevin for over 20 years. The money you gave me, I used it all to support him. She paused, then added, and Thomas is also mine and Kevin's son. The blood drained from Jason's face, as if his soul had been sucked out of him. He stared at Emily, his eyes filled with disbelief and despair. Kevin laughed contemptuously. Bro, you've been wearing a green hat for years. Jason felt his world completely collapse. The woman he deeply loved had betrayed him. His son wasn't his. 20 years of devotion had bought him nothing but a joke. Then he returned to his workstation, grabbed a knife, and rushed back, pouncing on Emily like a madman, stabbing her repeatedly while roaring hysterically, You slut! You ruined me! You ruined everything! Emily let out a scream, her blood instantly soaking her clothes. Sophie watched the bloody scene unfold before her in horror, while I calmly sipped my tea. The police quickly arrived and took Jason away. Sophie stared at me, stunned. Mom, was this the show you wanted me to see? I set down my teacup and spoke to her seriously. Sophie, today Mom is teaching you not to show mercy to your enemies. Jason wanted to steal our property, but we just drove him out of the house. Why be so ruthless? Sophie asked, confused. Because your father's injury at the construction site wasn't an accident. He was lured there by Jason's scheme, and the truck that lost control was sabotaged by Emily. I tried to remain calm, but my voice still contained hatred. I still can't forget how I felt when I saw Ethan covered in blood. For 25 years, I wanted to kill Jason and Emily every single day. But I held back because I wanted them to destroy each other. Jason's chef job was arranged by me, this way he would have easy access to sharp tools. Emily was lured there by me. Her lover was a male escort. I had the madam recommend to him 2 consumption vouchers I purchased for this restaurant, with seats directly facing Jason's station. He couldn't avoid seeing them even if he tried. Emily was sent to the hospital but died despite emergency efforts. Later, Sophie told me that Thomas, without Emily's money, struggled to make ends meet and ended up following his biological father into becoming a male escort. When she and her girlfriends went out partying, one of them even selected his services. How ironic. Days passed, and life seemed to return to normal. But a phone call from the hospital created ripples in our calm life. The doctor said Ethan had awakened. I could hardly believe my ears. After 25 years, he had finally woken up. I brought Sophie and my mother-in-law to the hospital immediately. In the hospital room, Ethan lay quietly in bed, his face pale but his eyes clear. When he saw me, he smiled slightly. Rachel, why have you gotten old? My nose stung, and tears welled up in my eyes. You slept for so long. I choked up. We've all been waiting for you for a long time. I pointed to the doorway where my mother-in-law and Sophie were waiting to come in one by one. Ethan's gaze fell on Sophie, asking who she was. I told him honestly that she was our daughter conceived through IVF. He was stunned for a moment but accepted it well, looking at Sophie with newfound affection. He asked what our daughter's name was. I answered, her name is Sophie, meaning wisdom, after you. Ethan smiled gently and said softly, Sophie, truly beautiful.